I appreciate that.
Welcome to Brand Talk, another way to talk. We're going to talk about business. We talk about brands that are in the news, your brand. We talk about brands that you use and you love every day. We have a different point of view. There's no yelling, there's no screaming, just good old conversation.
Welcome to Brand Talk, another way to talk, with your host, Dr. John Tantillo. And now, here is the host of Brand Talk, John Tantillo.
Well, hello, everybody. It's John Tantillo here. As Jim Burchard likes to refer to me, America's marketing doctor. And I'm here today with I think a charismatic, handsome, and warm guest. He's going to teach me the secrets on motivational speaking. And let me do the introduction to this fine young man. My guest today is one of the country's top 10 motivational speakers, a critically acclaimed author, award-winning musician, podcast host, and CEO, and founder of Rockstar Impact, a boutique agency that teaches people and organizations how to cultivate values-based leadership. His work has influenced the culture of some of the world's leading organizations. Passionate, engaging, and transformational, Brant encourages audiences to move forward with deliberate intention. His interactive and entertaining techniques of defining what matters most compel audiences to dive deeply into their lives, identify black sheep values, and speak their life-changing power into existence. It is with pleasure that I welcome my guest today, Brant Menswar, to Brand Talk. Welcome, Brant.
Well, after that introduction, I felt like I should turn around like, hey.
You're talking to me?
Shing. I need some glittery stuff flowing off of me.
So, look, I always wanted to play the music, an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted, and all I did was play the radio. But anyway, but what made you? Was it a woman that got you to start to play the guitar?
Well, I mean, isn't that everyone's story?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the 80s, so for me, it was all the hairband craze. So it was either, learn to play the guitar or put on spandex. So I chose the guitar. Maybe because I didn't put on spandex is why I never really made it in that time frame of my life in the 80s hairband scene.
Do you sing?
Yes.
So you sing, okay.
Yeah.
And what was the first song that you played on the guitar?
I think it's "Smoke on the Water." I think it's the rules that's the first song you need to learn to play when you get a guitar is "Smoke on the Water." Three chords. Yes.
3 chords. Okay.
That's it.
And I take it now. Do you do gigs right now? Do you?
No,
and do you play the guitar and do you sing? And
so I'm a retired rock star. So
you're a retired rock. Okay.
20 years in the music business, 2 different record deals, 2 different bands, toured the world, and pretty much now we only play charity shows just to raise money for the organizations we support. But very blessed to do it for a very long time, and happy to be on to the next chapter.
I got it. So when you say we, what is the we?
My band, Big Kettle Drum,
Okay.
who I toured with for 10 plus years. And before that, the first band signing the first record deal was a band called Fort Pastor. And we were sort of an Americana didgeridoo world music type of band. And 2010, we formed Big Kettle Drum with a few members of the old band, and have been sort of touring ever since. And it was an amazing time. Nobody expected it to last as long as it did, but we were very fortunate to find a little niche where people enjoyed what we did and would pay to see us play. And so we did that for almost 20 years.
Is there anything you miss about not performing regularly?
I've been able to transition from one stage to another. And so, I laugh because now I get treated way more like a rock star now than when I was an actual rock star. So nobody's afraid we're going to tear the hotel room apart.
Well, I guess it's a different kind of rock star. That's not anything deep, but I mean, your audience is different. I think it's good for the kids. So now you have adults appreciating what it is that you do, and which leads me to the next question: what is it that you do? I mean, some guys and gals, when you say motivational speaker, they correct me. I'm not a motivational speaker. I am a speaker. I am not a motivational speaker. Well, I'm sorry I asked the question.
Yeah.
So do you get any of that?
Oh, sure. I mean, I get why they're doing that, but they just don't have enough swagger to carry it is the issue. So when you come off of being an actual rock star to the speaking stage, you carry some of that swagger with you, that motivation. Sure. You call me whatever you want to call me as long as the check cashes.
Yeah,
I don't.
Absolutely.
I don't care. Yeah.
So really, what is it that you do?
Yeah. So
what is your brand? Go ahead.
I'm a keynote speaker. Is how I make my living, and an author. And so I have a brand new book that comes out September 29th, and it's called Black Sheep: Unleash the Extraordinary, Awe-Inspiring, Undiscovered You. And it's all about discovering what I call your black sheep values. And that's based on this idea that I was 47 years old when I finally found out why farmers don't value black sheep like the rest of the flock. And when I found out the truth, it just shocked me in such a way that I hadn't known the answer to that in 40 plus years of life, that I got inspired to write this book about it. And, the reason that farmers don't value black sheep like the rest of the flock is because a black sheep's wool can't be dyed. And so every black sheep is 100% authentically original. And I heard that and I'm like, gosh, we have demonized black sheep for hundreds of years. And, being 100% authentically original, like that is literally my life's goal. And so when I heard that, I'm like, we've got to figure out a way to turn this around. And so the idea of the book is that we all have what I call a flock of 5 black sheep values. These are personal, deeply held personal core values that no matter how much someone wants to try to twist or change them, they simply can't be moved, similar to a black sheep's wool. And that's what the book is about.
I love it. Can you get into some of those? I don't want you to give away the book, but
no.
But I find that if you give just enough, they'll go out and buy the book.
Well, let's talk about its application in branding, right? Because I'm a brand guy myself. So the idea in that, when you're in a band, if you're not a brand guy, you aren't making any money, because the only places that bands make money is selling merch. And so you've got to have the brand out there sort of leading the charge if you want to make any sort of money. And so even with the book, here's a copy of the book. So the book logo, which was designed by actually my son,
Wow.
is going to become a brand in and of itself. So we've got an apparel brand being launched, hats, shoes, the whole bit. And the idea though is this: when it comes to branding, what are you putting out as the voice of your brand? And my argument is, if you can't tell me what those black sheep values of your organization are, there is nothing you're going to be able to sell that's authentic to anybody. Right. And so when it comes to branding for me, so if I was in charge of something and you told me that one of the core values of the organization was transparency, and you wanted that to be out there, out front, in the branding, I would have to look at that and go, well, my black sheep values, my personal black sheep values, creativity, hope, impact, empathy, family, authenticity. That's it. I've got 6. And so I look at those and I go, how can I engage with transparency? How can I actually weave that into the brand story? So I have to look and go, gosh, for me, how can I creatively use transparency? How can I take transparency to provide hope for my people? How can I take transparency and have the type of impact that I want in their lives? And so that creates a bridge for me and an angle to take with a brand so that it actually is resonating at a different frequency, because it's literally the authentic values of the organization that are coming through. Mm-hmm. And it's the uniqueness that I'm able to bring, that unique contribution to the table, which sort of gives it that angle. I speak a lot to in the photography world. Somehow I found myself in that niche. And I tell photographers all the time, if you have not defined these things in your life, you have never taken an original photograph. Mm-hmm. You've only given me a reflection of what matters to everybody else. And all I care about is what matters to you. And so that's what this work really does.
Yeah. Well, I have a saying, in marketing, it's not about you, it's all about your customer. Mm-hmm. And you may think that your brand speaks to certain issues, and to your customer, it has nothing to do with that. And that's where you have to do an inventory every once in a while to find out whether or not, what do your customers feel? Are they on the same page with all of this branding?
Yeah.
I think it's extremely, extremely important. So how do you get, I like to come back to this idea of the black sheep, but how do you survive in the COVID world? I saw on your website you have very, very proactively marketed your virtual network, I should say, of show.
Sure.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
So in March, I think like many people that do what I do for a living, we watched every revenue generating gig disappear in a matter of a week or two. And so I literally watched, I don't know, $300,000-$400,000 just go down the tubes, right? And so what do you do? So here's part of where our black sheep values really come into play, is that most people would panic, right? But for me, all I can focus on are my non-negotiables. And so my non-negotiables, I just leaned into those and say, how can I get creative? How can I take these virtual sessions and make them something more? How can they leave people with hope that things are going to be okay? Can I use this intimate setting to have a deeper level of impact than standing on a stage in front of, 2,000 or 3,000 people? And so that's what I was able to do. And so I invested in the technology. I learned how to use the technology so that whether we're sitting here and I can move my camera and create this feeling of something different than just sitting around and trying to be a talking head. So the idea of using technology to its strengths and being able to do everything myself without a crew, an AV crew, that I had to be able to manage all these sorts of things and give the talk at the same time, just really allowed me to sort of, through forced innovation, come up with different ways to maintain the value of what I was doing so that I didn't have to discount my rates just because I was virtual. The truth is it takes 3 times the effort to pull something off virtually than it does for me to do it live.
Isn't that the truth? Yeah. I couldn't agree more. So are you very proficient at this right now?
Yes.
It's how did you learn it? Excuse me. I mean, how did you learn it?
It's through a ton of research. I dove into the gamer world, right? Because gamers have been live streaming for so long that I had to go in and find out, like, what are they using for gear? How are they doing this? How do they set it up so that it makes sense? And everything from even what we're looking at here with the BrandTalkk overlay and how we are able to position things and logos and all that sort of stuff. And for me, it was sort of learning what I need. What's the bare minimum I need to do something that looks amazing? I didn't want to spend $20,000 or $30,000 to create a massive studio. Right. So I just went out and got a few little toys, and so I can turn myself into cartoons if I want to, like this. If you're watching this, you can see that I am literally a cartoon, right? So I have this ability to sort of take myself out of reality, and that just lets me connect at a different level when I'm doing talks. I have the ability to go to overhead shots where I'm writing down on a pad of paper what I want to bring forth so that I'm keeping their attention, but I'm doing it in a different way than maybe what they've seen before. I'm able to put overlays on the screen where people can see my flock of 5 or 6 that I have here, that they can learn more about myself. And so I learned how to use all of these things in a proficient manner so that when I ask for the money that I want, they go, of course it's that expensive. It looks amazing.
Right. Did I cut you off?
No, you're good.
No. I just, Erica, we got to do this because see, I'm doing what's happening with me. If I could jump in, I teach all my classes. I have 6 classes, one of which will be on at 6 o'clock, and it's all on Zoom.
Yeah.
And and the student, and what we had to deal with, what the school, the graduate school had to deal with, is how do you communicate to your students that this Zoom version is just as effective as the live, all right? And you answered it, and that really looks like I got some work to do. But that's great. Where did you go first? Where was your first place to research this, other than going on the internet?
That literally for me was I had to go and look at the 2 things that I knew had to be sort of front and center were audio and video, right? So you have to sound good. And so if you have a bad microphone or you're using some sort of a built-in microphone, it's never going to sound as good as it needs to. So you got to go out and invest in some outboard gear a little bit, right? Doesn't have to be crazy, but get yourself a $100 microphone, and all of a sudden everybody hears you nice and clearly. Right. And then the second thing was the camera itself. I knew that I needed to have a camera that could do true high def, and it wasn't an arm. I use a Sony A5100, which is about a $440 camera. It's not a ton of money, but gosh, it makes a huge difference when you are presenting to people and you want it to sort of be encoded in the right way, and you want it to be a smooth, connection of what you have. And then everything else has been trial and error. The turning myself into a cartoon, you might think it's some crazy. It's literally my iPhone. I'm staring at my iPhone. I have my iPhone set up with animojis, and I'm pretending that I'm sending a text to someone, and I'm just capturing the live screen, and that's all it is.
I love it. Just love it. Yeah. I invested in a fairly good mic where Pride says to me, gee, that mic really sounds very professional. Yeah. So I did that. The camera, I only have a low G camera, but I would like to take it up a notch.
Sure.
And this might be inside baseball, what we're talking about, But if what this show is about is
Yeah.
teaching people about branding,
Yeah.
and if you're thinking about doing a podcast, or if you're thinking about doing videos on YouTube,
Yep.
these are the kinds of things that you really need to know. And I don't think it's. I hope you don't feel that it's so mundane. But I think
No.
it's. But go ahead.
So listen, I just put together, so for the launch of this book, I put together this influencer box, right? And that went out to some big social media influencers or best-selling authors that we wanted to sort of introduce to this book. And as I'm putting it together, it's all about the branding. It's all about the branding. So inside this, first of all, I built the box from scratch online with custom branded messaging. Every time they open a flap, it tells them something else, right?
Right.
On the inside, I have got, whether it's custom hats, right? So I've got custom hats with my logo on there in a partnership with Branded Bills, or it's, doing customized journals that are all built, whether they say, flock on, or they say, are you ready for this? All of these different types of journals that get put together. I've got custom coffee with a, wax sealed stamp on the front that is private labeled for myself. It has tissue paper with my logo on it. It has, every little detail, because that's what I want my brand to say when someone opens it up,
Okay. What do you say to the folks that would say that you're too commercial, or that okay, you're supposed to be a speaker. You're not supposed to be a product, seller. Go ahead.
Here's the deal. If you're a good speaker, you are the product. And so the truth is, the brand is me. And if I'm not out there doing the right work, and I'm not out there convincing people to change their lives or do whatever, they're not going to buy my books. They're not going to look at my courses. They're not going to do any of that stuff.
Yeah, it's part of what we call in marketing promotion. One of the 4 P's.
Sure.
If you're not out there reinforcing the brand, guess what happens? Nothing happens.
It's true.
People, just don't, put their arms around. They have to understand. It's not easy to be a marketer. It really isn't, because you are criticized no matter what you do, and everybody's got advice as to what you should be doing. And
very much to me, it's like, I think of it like, in this particular case, with what I do for a living, if you're a speaker or you are an author or whatever that is, you're sort of like a professional athlete that plays an individual sport, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like you play tennis, or you play golf, or, where you've got the sport itself that will generate some views and some things, but it's really all about you as to whether or not they're going to watch you play that sport, right? And it's the same thing in the speaking world, right? So not that the difference is, I'm not going to show up on stage with 86 logos on a jumper that I'm wearing to promote whoever it is that's sponsoring me. But the idea is, for me, there are certain brands that I look at as iconic for myself and where I want to be and how I want to position myself in the market. That's a brand like John Varvatos. John Varvatos is every piece of clothing in my closet that I wear on stage is a piece from John Varvatos's collection. It's because that brand, how he presents that brand, even if you look at his tabletop displays, it is mind blowing to the detail that they go to when they promote those things. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I also know if I walk into one of his clothing stores, I'm going to spend, $2,500 on a jacket. And that's because that's the type of brand that he is. And that's, you can expect that's what you're going to pay. There's no surprise. And in that same light, I want to be able to produce such incredible content and quality that nobody gets sticker shock when they approach me to speak at their conference.
Right. Well, I'm these last few days I was preparing for my class. No, I just don't get up on and do the PowerPoint. I actually prep before my
Nice.
class, and that's what we were. I was just going over that, this whole idea of what we call in the business brand equity, so that your customer really feels, gives your brand a value as to whether or not they're going to, as you said in one of your videos, are you a fan?
Yes.
What are you willing to put down for a ticket? What are you willing to wait in line for? And you love that place that has the greatest chicken in the world.
Yes. So, it's a
How did you talk about that? Go ahead.
it's a combination, right? It's a combination for me of quality of the brand, and then sort of the service of the brand, right? Those are the two things that I'm looking for when I want to give my loyalty somewhere. And so I part of one of the talks I do, I talk about Chick-fil-A, and that I know they have their lovers and their naysayers, and I don't want to get into the politics of Chick-fil-A, but what I will tell you is that two things. Number one, their chicken sandwich is delicious. In my opinion, it is delicious. Okay.
It is delicious.
Second thing is they have mastered the art of service. And if you go through their drive-through, the difference between them and McDonald's for me, if I drive by the McDonald's, and listen, I love McDonald's like anybody else loves me. It's the thing that nobody wants to admit, but we're shoving quarter pounders into our mouth every time we can get away with it. Right. And so the idea though, for me, is if I drive by a McDonald's and there are more than 3 or 4 cars in the drive-through, I'm out. I'm not even stopping. I'm not pulling in. I know that it's going to be 30 minutes for me to get anything because the service is awful. It's horrendous no matter where I go into a McDonald's. As a matter of fact, I joke around that now they make you do everything yourself. You got to go in and you got to push the buttons, and I have to do the order. And I'm like, I don't even work here. Why am I at the register? I don't need to be at the register. And yet with Chick-fil-A, there could be 100 cars in their drive-through, and I know I'm not going to be there more than about 7 minutes because they've got people out front there. They've built other lines where lines don't exist. They've got people with iPads and they're knocking everything in, and I just know the experience that I can expect from that. And because of that loyalty and the fact that I've done it over and over and over again, and I get the same experience every time, on the occasion that they screw up an order, on the occasion that they didn't leave the pickle off or whatever it was that I asked, they also get my forgiveness way quicker, right?
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you talk about service and Chick-fil-A. About a year ago, there aren't many Chick-fil-A's in New York,
right?
And there are about 2 in Midtown, and then there's one in the Queens Mall. And I had gone there because everybody was screaming about the chicken sandwich, and I got the chicken sandwich, and I didn't order a soda with it. I was being a cheapskate for one reason or another. I didn't order, and one of these outgoing, positive employees said, "Sir, would you like a soda? It's no charge." And I just underscored what you said, and I didn't recognize. I just thought it was a mistake,
right?
But I didn't. But I mean, I liked the taste experience, but I really didn't, because I hadn't gone enough to realize about the service experience. And I guess that's the beauty of being a brand loyal customer,
and the power of a brand that empowers their employees to do something like that, right?
Oh, just absolutely incredible. And that's why that's why I really like certain retail outlets. I have a good experience also with Staples. I don't know if you
Sure.
have, but
Sure.
I mean, and then I'll say to the manager, there's not a clunker in the group.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
every one of them is willing to help you, and they don't say that thing that we never want to hear as a customer. No.
That's right. That's right.
You know?
It's why as a business, so as a business traveler who travels so much to go speak at conferences, or at least before COVID anyways, I am a huge American Express customer, right? And there's a couple of reasons for that.
Right.
And so, number one, I might pay $500 a year to get their platinum card, but it also gets me access to every Delta lounge that I want to be in when I'm traveling so much. But, the other day, to give you a perfect example, I get an email, a text, and a call that they think my card has been compromised. And indeed it had been. Somebody was trying to charge $100 at a Chevron somewhere, and they flagged it. But here's the best thing about why I'm so loyal to a brand like that is that I did not worry for a half a second, because I know exactly what's going to happen. They asked me a couple of questions. They went through a couple of charges. We found 3 out of the last 2 weeks that were bogus. They said, don't worry about it. We've got another card out to you. You'll have it tomorrow by carrier. And we're going to take care of this. Also, don't worry about anything that you have set up to auto pay online, because it'll automatically roll over to the new number. And
I love it. Yeah.
And I'm going, oh my gosh, you just I can't begin to tell you. Through most times in my head, I would have sat there and gone, how many accounts do I have attached to that card that I'm now going to have to go in and change every single one of them over to the new number? But no, they've thought through these things, and that's what gets that loyalty to the brand that makes me want to sing it from the mountaintops, even though I pay for the privilege. Right. Yeah. That's what's crazy. It's not a free card. I actually have to pay every year. But gosh, whether it's their concierge service or I'm able to book my travel through American Express Travel, all of those different things, I take advantage of each one of those things because I know that the quality and the service that I'm going to get are going to be top notch every time.
I couldn't agree with you more. And when service companies give you service and do it well,
yeah,
there's nothing like it.
That's right.
And when they don't, wow, you really want to pull your hair out. And in my case, you don't really want to do that because there's not too much there. There's a concept you have called ACDC. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the idea here for me, with this concept of ACDC that I came up with a couple of years ago, was really about centered around core values, right? And so it's sort of started off with an awareness of your core values and then the discipline to stay committed. And that's where the ACDC comes from. And so what I have found over the last few years of this work in the core values and purpose space is that the majority of us are winging it, right? If I asked you, tell me what your 4 or 5 non-negotiables are, why you chose them, give me some examples from your past so I know they're real, and then tell me how you speak them into existence every day. I get these blank stares, right? Or if I say, tell me what your life's purpose is in one succinct sentence, and people will humble and stumble and all those sorts of things around what they're trying to say. And so we're winging it, whether we like it or not, right? And so the idea for me was you have to have an awareness of what matters most to you. If you don't want to wing it, it starts by discovering what your non-negotiables are, what these black sheep values are, right? And so once you discover what they are, then you have to prove that they're real. See, because most of the time we often, just like on any test you've ever taken or assessment that your organization has asked you to take, you're not 100% authentically real or honest with those answers. Sometimes you're giving what's real for you. Sometimes you're giving what you want to be real for you. And sometimes you're giving what you think others want to be real for you. And so it's the same process when you're digging through your core values. You have to figure out what are yours. And if you have other people's sheep sort of in your flock, you've got to get those out of there so that you can feed your own first. And then once you have that, well, then you can choose when and where they show up to maximize the impact in your life every day. That's living with deliberate intention. That's speaking them into existence. And that's really where that AC/DC concept comes from. And in the idea of going back to the farmer's analogy, and this is what I think you'll love from a branding perspective. So while farmers don't value black sheep like the rest of the flock, they certainly do value them, but just in a very different way. So sheep farmers, keep one black sheep for every 100 white sheep in their care as a marker. So every morning the sheep farmer wakes up and they look out over their flock. And if they have 500 sheep in their care, they should see 5 black sheep. It's the black sheep's ability to stand out from the crowd that gets the farmer's first look every morning. The first look, right? If they don't see those 5, they know there's something wrong. It's famine, it's wolves, it's disease, it's something. But because they're able to stand out, they actually are able to get the farmer's first look. And as a brand, is that not your ultimate goal, is to get your customer's first look every time? Right? And so the idea is, how do you get the first look? You get by leading with those black sheep values, those things that allow you to stand out from the 495 other companies that do exactly the same thing that you do. And that's how you get the first look. Find out what those values are, speak them into existence, lead with them. And that's why you experience that Chick-fil-A. They're leading with those values that you go, oh my gosh, okay, I think I'm going to like this. And because of that, you'll go back. And that's all that you can ask as a brand, is to get people to believe and trust and come back.
Yeah. What makes you passionate?
For me, it's people being able to do what they were meant to do with their lives. And that's is a blessing and a gift. And I don't think most people understand that it's possible, but they have to figure out what matters most first to know what to do next.
Yeah. I ask you that question because what you did, you son of a gun, you got me to think about what I was passionate about. And I have to say, it's teaching.
That's great.
When all is said and done, and I went on this, on this journey where I had my own marketing business and I won awards, and now I'm writing for a major news organization, and I'm doing all the things that I really, really want to do. But what it all comes back to is the teaching part. That what I want to be able to do is teach in a entertaining way, provide information, so that even when I'm on TV,
yes,
I'm in fact letting them know. The other day, I basically said, advertising, as we know, broadcast advertising, for all intents and purposes, is finished.
Sure.
It's digital. And if you don't understand that, you're going to lose.
Yeah.
You're going to lose. I mean, come on. Now, this is from a 69-year-old guy saying this. Get over it. Get over it. Don't complain about it. And as Nike would say, just do it. So what you want to do is you want to be able to convey that to young people.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, here's the thing that I have found, at least with this next generation sort of coming up. And I've got 2 of those generations that live in my household that are my sons are 19 and 23. Right. And so
they're Zers generation. They're not millennials, they're Zers.
So here's they are passionate. They care about a whole bunch of things. There's a lot of things that are really important to them, but they don't know what their non-negotiables are. And that's the trick here, is that when everything is important, nothing is important. Right. And so it takes some work to separate things that are important from things that are non-negotiables. And when you do that, you start to understand that these are the things that you have to honor every day in your actions. So while teaching is something that you love to do, I come back to, okay, so how are you going to teach? Well, you are somebody who is obviously creative. I can see it. I think anybody can see that in what you present when you come on screen. But you have to start to find those other black sheep values, because that's going to tell you how you're going to engage with people. Because if you lead with those, then it feels authentic, because it is authentic, right? It's not this Instagram lifestyle where you're putting out your best version of yourself. No, you are actually leading with the things that matter most. It's why I get so frustrated in the political spectrum with people, is that I don't have conversations with people about politics unless they can tell me unless they can tell me what their flock of 5 black sheep values are. If you can tell me what your non-negotiables are and tell me why, I will have a conversation with you all day long. But if you can't, then the best I can hope for is an emotion, is a feeling, is a belief. And I don't care about any of that stuff. All I care about is what matters most to you. Because if we can get to that, we're going to find common ground so quickly. But if we ignore all of those things and just allow ourselves to get caught up in an emotional tornado, it makes it impossible for us to move forward. And so that, to me, is the same sort of a message in the branding of whatever it is that you're trying to put out there. If you're only trying to connect emotionally on feelings that people have, and you're not leading with what really matters most to you, then that brand is going to come and go faster than you can possibly blink an eye. But if you lead with those things that matter most, then you're going to resonate with generations of people. And that's really, I would assume, would be the ultimate goal in branding.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, I think you hit on it, is this idea, to thy own brand be true. And what you don't want to do is, you don't want to create something just to get attention.
That's right.
And it's not you.
That's right.
Okay, this is me. If you see me walking to go to the market, this is the way you see me. And people say, why did you dress up to go here? Why did you do this?
Yes.
You know, my friend Willie always says, John, you're always, when I go to the Yankee Stadium, I'm dressed like this. And when I go, people, would you take a picture with my girlfriend?
Yes.
You look so elegant. Now, I'm an ordinary looking guy. All right. There's nothing special about me. But when you put this all together, magical things happen. People want to stop. Want to talk. It's a conversation that you want to start.
Yes.
I mean, this isn't hard.
It resonates because it's real, right?
Right. Now, and the other thing that I get is, only you, John, can pull that off. Only you can pull the stripes and the polka dots, which is my brand. Because all my girlfriends tell me they don't go. It doesn't go. I said, will you please?
I will tell you, John, that there are no striped and polka dot combinations in the John Varvatos catalog.
Right. That's exactly right. And so I wouldn't make a mistake. 2 point. Okay.
Yes.
2 point. I was a little concerned that maybe I would go over the top. All right. But what I did, thanks to my wonderful Aunt Anna, she helped me establish a relationship with Brooks Brothers, because as a young man, I couldn't afford those suits, but Aunt Anna made sure that I was able to get the suits that I wanted. And of course, what she did teach me is that you went for the sales.
Yes.
So a $500 suit at the time would be $250 or $300, right?
That's right. Yeah.
And as I said, there's nothing like a Brooks Brothers tailor. So you knew that you needed the inch, not
That's
an
right.
inch cuff, but an inch and 3/4 cuff.
That's
Because
right.
that was the traditional cuff. So
Yeah.
what I did, or said to myself, if they sell it at Brooks Brothers, I basically can't make a mistake. Okay.
Yep.
And
I
that's
get it.
and that's basically what I did. And then as the years went on, what I did is I got to this polka dot brand. And
Yeah.
so now that's what I only have polka dot ties.
Well, think of it. It's not just, I mean, so the brand quality got you to come and you sort of had this experience and you're able to tie it to even a family experience with your aunt, right? And so it's like you have all of these feelings and emotions wrapped up in this experience of you as a kid. And the brand was already positioned as like oh my gosh, I got a Brooks Brothers suit, right? That's like a big deal. But now think of how it makes you feel when you wear it.
Right.
Like when you walk out on stage wearing that suit, you just have a level of confidence, because if you were wearing something that wasn't you, that was, even if it was nice and it wasn't you, you don't feel like yourself. And so your authentic self can't actually be seen because it's masked by this other thing that's not really you. And that's taken me a long time because I'm a cheap SOB too, right? And it's like, I don't want to spend the money, but what I've realized is I'm going to spend the money in a few key pieces that really make me feel confident. I feel like I look good in them, right? And I have that confidence. And I know for a fact that it's like, I'm going to feel confident when I wear it. Like, gosh, look at this. How could somebody look at this suit and not feel like, man, that looks amazing? So that to me is worth every penny. And I'd rather have less of that quality, but be able to afford some of that quality than to go out and spend a bunch of money on stuff that just, it's not me. It's never going to be me. And even if it's good stuff, it's not my brand.
Yeah. This is Brand Talk, another way to talk, heard every Thursday live from 3 to 4 on YouTube and on Facebook. And my guest today is the ever wonderful Brant Menswar. And did I say that right?
You got it.
Okay. I didn't want to do that. And I'm going to say something. I hope I don't embarrass you, but being the age that I am, I always bring that up. I'm beginning. Pride was right. I think the world of you, and I only have known you now for about an hour. And what did the kids say? Man crush? Is that? I mean, it's nothing deviant for my.
I love it.
So it's one of those things that we used to call them. It used to, in my generation, it was called a man's man.
Yes.
A man's man was two straight guys that appreciated each other for doing manly things. There was nothing crazy going on. It was called a man's man. So you're a man. You're a man's man.
I did a podcast interview this morning on a show called The Art of Masculinity. So
yes.
It's been one of those days for me. Yes.
I love it. I love it, man. Gee whiz. That's great. Let's see. I also liked, and we kind of like touched on it, but I love your what I would call your headlines, the way you bring people in, and the concept of fan. I love that. I love the black sheep.
Yeah.
I love the idea of you trying to get people to be passionate. These are you're good with headlines. And you're good with bringing people in. Where do you come up with these headlines? Is it right before you go to bed? Is it do you wake up and dream about it and wake up and write about it after you wake up?
So I think it's a couple things. One is that creativity is one of my black sheep, and for me, it is definitely something that I lean into heavily, just by nature. The second thing I would say is 20 years as a songwriter. If you don't cut to the chase pretty quick, no one's listening to your song. So you got to sort of lead with that chorus. What's that line that's going to hook them and keep them around long enough to get to the first chorus? And that's sort of the same approach I've taken. And there's, honestly, to give credit where it's due, there's an incredible woman named Tamsin Webster who teaches something called the red thread. And if you have not looked at anything that she's done, she's brilliant. She's ran TEDx Cambridge, helped with that program for years and years there on the speaker side. But she teaches you how to craft a narrative. And that's what this red thread is. And so I learned this from her a few years ago, and all of my communication follows the red thread. And so I don't have to know every word that I'm going to say. I just have to know the 5 pieces of this red thread, and I can go out and have a conversation with anybody about it. Right. And so that's what's allowed me to sort of take different approaches to the same content, because I know sort of these markers that I'm going to get to over the course of this talk that allows me to keep the audience engaged through this storytelling narrative.
Where did your confidence come from?
I grew up a super competitive athlete. So I was sort of bred to play baseball, and that was my plan. And
excuse me, were you an infielder?
I was a pitcher.
You were a pitcher?
I was a pitcher.
Lefty or righty?
Righty.
And how good was your fastball?
I was throwing about 90, 91 at 14 years old.
Wow.
And so I had a lot of looks from people at that time. Wow. My dad is a very well-known pitching coach up in New England. And so that was sort of my uncle had a very successful baseball career as a catcher all the way through college, and had a tryout with the Cubs. And, I grew up a lifelong Red Sox fan, which I know has got to hurt you being a Yankees guy. Yeah. But it is what it is. We learn to appreciate each other. And, that's honestly the best brand appreciation I can think of is the Red Sox Yankees tradition. But, for me, I got hurt. And so I couldn't play anymore. And that's sort of what happened. But that early time for me in sports was just, I didn't want to just win. Yeah. I wanted to win by such a large margin that you would never want to attempt it again. And I was able to sort of take that into the music business, and then take that into the speaking business.
Well, see, I had just the opposite. All my life, I was a overweight or chubby kid, and raised by a very strict mother, and of course went to Catholic school.
Sure.
So add to that, and you were you could stutter, and you could not feel confident, and so not only did you have to worry about your authority figures, you would have to worry about the guys that you were playing ball with. And I wasn't a very good ball player, to be honest, but I was smart enough even back then to know my brand and become an umpire.
Yeah.
So like at 15 years old, I was umpiring and making money as an umpire. While my friends were, of course, playing ball. Yeah. They but I was a good glove man.
Yeah.
Nothing could get by me in terms of looking back. I couldn't hit, nor could I throw. I had when I played third base, it went to first base on 2 bounces. Yes. One of those over the head. I had a bad arm.
Sure.
But so what I'm basically saying, and I'm doing this for those of in our audience that don't have these confidence issues. It's for some of us, it takes a little bit of time to get where we got to go. but I think I did okay. But go ahead.
Listen, it's one of those things that, I thought I knew what my life was going to look like. Right. And so I had this whole plan of what I was going to do. And then all of a sudden, it's not even an option. Right. So it's like, you don't just throw out all of the doctor's opinions as to what's happening and that you're going to be able to overcome a physical issue. I literally broke my shoulder. So it was like something that I just couldn't overcome. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I had to shift and find something to put my passion into. And it took me, 30 years to figure out, even as a literal rock star for 20 years, it still wasn't what I was meant to do. And I didn't land into what I'm doing now until 6 or 7 years ago. And I can finally say that I feel like I'm doing what I was born to do. But gosh, it's been a long, twisty, windy, bumpy road to get here.
Right. Was there a significant event in your life where I said, okay, put a fork in it. I'm not doing this band stuff anymore. I want to do something different. And maybe if you could talk a little bit about why public speaking or why motivational speaking. How did you get to this place?
Yes, for sure. So it all ties into why I wrote this book, right? So the sort of the spark for that came in 2012. My oldest son was 14 years old and was diagnosed with a rare blood cancer that he needed a bone marrow transplant in order to survive. Wow. That experience, we lived in the hospital for 263 straight days. Oh. And I knew, so he survived, but it was, and it's 8 years later and he's still facing some issues, but it's one of those things that I knew I couldn't be out on the road touring as much as I was. I couldn't be gone for weeks or months at a time. I had to shift. And so I had a buddy who was sort of doing this stuff on the side, and I knew I could do this and be home a lot more than I was and still be able to pay the bills. And so that's sort of what got me started. But the whole sort of impetus as to why public speaking is for me, I made some horrible, horrible decisions during that time when my son was sick. And, one of them was listening to the doctors give me the advice to go say your goodbyes because they didn't think he was going to make it through the night. Oh. And so I'm sitting there and I have this conversation with my son, with my wife and his younger brother. And, I'm trying to find the words because this is what the doctors told me to do. And I get through it and, I'm just devastated and they're telling me that he's literally not going to make it to the morning. And what ends up happening next is all I can tell you is that it was a miracle. So I call my younger brother who lives 1,500 miles away up in New England in New Hampshire. And I tell him, look, he's not going to have time to get down here to say his goodbye. So he's going to have to do it over the phone if he wants to. And so he's obviously distraught. He says his goodbyes. He hangs up the phone and he feels just helpless. He wants to try to do something. And so he sits on his couch and he films himself holding up these poster boards as sort of a Hail Mary attempt to try to find a solution to something we were told was impossible. Mm-hmm. And so, my nephew's dying. He's got 24 hours. This is what he has. Please help us. We don't have any other options. He never said a word. He played the song Fix You by Coldplay, start to finish. And when the song was done, he turned the camera off. He uploaded it to YouTube. So Theo my son makes it through the night. I'm sitting on the edge of the bed. And the next morning, my phone is ringing off the hook. And I'm trying to be present. I'm trying to spend every last second I can with him. And a couple hours go by and I finally grab my phone. And it's literally hot from vibrating all morning. And I look and I see all these numbers and messages from people that I don't recognize. And what I didn't know is that my brother had filmed this video and he uploaded it to YouTube. And by the time I grabbed my phone, it had already been seen 500,000 times. Oh. And so I started to get messages from people all over the world. And a couple of them were doctors. And I got a voicemail from a doctor from MD Anderson in Houston who said, listen, there's this experimental treatment that I don't know that your doctor's aware of. I would love to talk to him. Would you mind if I chat? And so we said, absolutely. And then I got a call from Dr. Tim Johnson from Good Morning America. And he said, listen, you tell your doctor anybody he wants to speak to, get me a list and I'll try to make it happen in the next 24 hours. And so we made a list of a doctor at Dana-Farber up in Boston and a research doctor at Cornell. And the 4 doctors put their heads together and they came up with this crazy plan to try to save Theo's life. It worked. And actually today is Theo's 23rd birthday.
Oh man,
I go back and this incredible fairy tale ending that we got, which we know not everybody gets from living in a hospital for a year in a pediatric ward. But I go back and I said, for 5 years after that, the last thought I had every night before I went to bed was, I wonder if he thinks if I gave up on him. And that decision that I made was driven because I did not have these things defined in my life. I did not have these black sheep values identified. And so I just allowed somebody to tell me what was possible. They don't possess that kind of power. They're not a wizard. They can't control that outcome. So I was able to sort of take all of those thoughts and put them into this book to say, listen, you got to define these things so that when the biggest storm of your life rolls in, you've got something to hold on to. Because if I go back to that night, knowing what I know now, the conversation I would have had with him would have never been to say goodbye. It would have been to instill hope and impact and creativity and getting him to do everything possible to hold on, right? And that to me was the impetus of writing this book, and really what I feel like everybody needs to do is to figure this out so that they're prepared when something like this happens.
What a story. I mean, it's just beautiful. I have so much more respect for you. I mean, I respected you right from the get-go, but this beautiful the way you just summed it up, and now I know why you're a sought-after speaker. I mean, you really know how to touch people. That was a beautiful, beautiful story, and God bless Theo.
Thank you, brother.
That's just wonderful.
Thank you.
And I'm sad to say that our time is up here.
Yeah.
And one of the things I'm going to do, I hope I passed the litmus test when I'm in Florida visiting some relatives. You will definitely, you and Theo and your other son and your wife we'll all go out for dinner at your favorite restaurant, whatever it is, and we'll break bread together.
I would love it.
That's what I love. That's what I love to do. And if you don't believe me, just ask Willie Rizzo, Jilly Rizzo's son, who was Frank Sinatra's bodyguard. He knows that I love to go to restaurants. So
well,
he'll probably kill me for that.
It sounds amazing, and I will most certainly take you up on that offer.
Okay, that sounds great. Okay, everybody, thank you. And thank you, Brant. It was really a pleasure. And we'll see you next week on Brand Talk. Thank you.